Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. What we are here today, as we've been reminded, the 10th of December, the anniversary of the signing of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, to protect these human lives because it is on the cards from the behavior of Iraq in the previous years that they will risk death or serious bodily injury. They are refugees from Iran. There is a duty on the world to protect them. I first came into this matter to conduct an inquiry as a former United Nations judge into the killings, the prison killings of 1988. I interviewed a lot of survivors of those killings, and I concluded without hesitation that that was one of the greatest atrocities of the post-war world. It was worse than the Japanese death marches at the end of World War II. It was worse than Srebrenica, because so many thousands of prisoners were killed, political prisoners. Many of them had served their sentence, most of them young people arrested in the early 1980s for demonstrating against the Ayatollah's regime, and they were massacred. They were taken by death committees. They were sentenced without trial. They were hung 6 at a time from cranes in the prison courtyards. It was a monstrous crime that has never been punished. We have today a tribunal in Bangladesh dealing with people who committed crimes in 1971. We have the UN tribunal dealing with Cambodia, the crimes there in 1979. We have never properly investigated or punished the crimes against humanity committed by the Iranian regime, by men who are now the supreme leader, Mr. Rafsanjani. We have found, certainly my report concluded, that many of the current Iranian regime are deeply implicated in the crimes against humanity of 1988. Now, we have the particular problem of Camp Ashraf, which is in a way a continuation of the malice of the mullahs without mercy. We've had General Phillips' testimony today that confirms that they were formally recognized as protected persons under the Geneva Convention. Well, let me tell you that once you are defined and listed as a protected person under the Geneva Conventions, how long does that last? It lasts until you no longer need protection, and they need protection today. So not only do we have the problem, not only are they protected under the Geneva Convention, but we have the decommissioning. The decommissioning process went on in 2003, and the result of that was that the deputy commander of the coalition forces praised the residents of Camp Ashraf for working together in the spirit of common humanitarianism, and confirmed the coalition's endorsement of their right to be protected from violence and their right as refugees not to be what we lawyers call refouled, that is, sent back to Iran, where they will without doubt be executed. So their safety seemed assured, and it seemed assured after they did the world great service by revealing Iran's secret nuclear facility at Natanz. And of course, that deepened the hatred of them by the Iranian regime, which began its diplomatic pressure on Iraq to destroy Camp Ashraf. Prime Minister al-Maliki said, and I quote, he was determined, I am determined to put an end to the PMOI. And as soon as the US combat forces started to leave, he started his plan to put an end to them. There was the July 2009 killings and attack on the camp, watched hopelessly by military observers from the UN. It was apparently planned to terrify the residents and have them leave voluntarily, but instead it steeled their resolve. So, despite the international outcry in 2009, al-Maliki continued the siege of the camp, denying supplies of food and medicine. And then, of course, in 2011, after the US Camp Grizzly was disbanded, al-Maliki ordered that assault, that murderous assault in April, which left 36 dead and over 300 injured with gunshot and shrapnel wounds. And, of course, who was the first to congratulate Iraq? It was Iran, congratulating them, and I quote, for their positive stance that strengthens mutual relations. Presumably a stance that was positive because it included killing innocent people that both governments disliked. Of course, there was an international outcry, much hand-wringing in the White House, deeply troubled, it said, by the casualties, not troubled enough to do anything to protect the residents from the massacre that is likely when the US troops finally pull out in December the 21st. That's when al-Maliki's deadline expires. This camp has cost millions to put together. There are libraries, there are buildings, there are schools. It is a living and working camp. It cannot be closed without proper compensation, and it cannot be closed in a way that puts refugees at risk. The law is clear. The people of Ashraf are refugees. They must be entitled to protection from the attacks of al-Maliki's forces. And it is ironic, isn't it, that the Obama administration is giving a free kick to Camp Ashraf's enemies by its failure to lift the terrorist designation on the PMOI. In Britain, the court not only lifted the designation of terrorist, it said that it was perverse, that was its word, to apply it in the first place. In Europe, it's been removed a year ago, over a year ago. A US court ordered the State Department to reconsider because the designation had been made without due process. The failure of the State Department to do so provides really the tormentors of the Ashraf refugees, by which I mean Iran and pro-Iranian Iraqi government, with a bogus excuse to deny them their rights. There is no doubt that al-Maliki was the man who ordered the attack in 2009. There is no doubt he was the man who ordered the attack in 2011. He bears command responsibility in international law for perpetrating what is a crime against humanity. My suggestion is perhaps that when he comes to Washington next week, he should not be feted, he should be arrested. That is it not truly appalling to any member of the coalition of the willing who thought they were restoring democracy and overthrowing a tyrant to have this kind of tyrannous behavior as the response of the government that they set in power. So, for that reason, my suggestion is that the Camp Ashraf must remain until the very last one of those 3,500 residents are properly processed and are given refuge, the refuge that they're entitled under international law. I believe that they must be given safe passage out of Iraq. The Iranian regime today is the very same regime. It's really the same regime that killed thousands of defenseless MEK political prisoners in 1988. And the greatest objection to Iran developing nuclear weapons is the fact that it's a regime that has already granted itself impunity for mass murder. And unless it is brought to book, it may mass murder again. Thank you.